Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Azarov's Chess Channel, and welcome to the Magnus Carlsen Invitational Tournament in 2020. So, in my opinion, this is the best tournament that we had so far in 2020. We had now many organized tournaments by FIDE, but this is really a great tournament that Magnus Carlsen has organized. It shows really the difference when a chess player organizes a tournament than maybe an organization like the FIDE, because the FIDE has different interests than a chess player, of course. Here, Magnus Carlsen pulled off, I think, one of the best formats of tournaments. First of all, we have 8 top grandmasters playing, and I'm really looking forward to see again a new clash between Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen. And it's really a great thing that Magnus Carlsen has invited also Alireza Firouzja to play here, because maybe Alireza is not one of the best players now by rating points, but he really deserves to be in this tournament. We have really the top grandmaster Hikaru, Fabiano Caruana, Maxime Vachier-Grave. I don't want to leave anyone out, but this is really, I think these are really the best 8 players that we'll see in this very nice format, and they will play every day against each other in these 4 rapid games. And after these 4 rapid games, we'll have this one round robin. This is really a different style of a tournament, and I think in order to attract maybe some more new chess players, this is much better than this usual classical time format in which we see maybe after 7 hours a draw or something. So many times in this FIDE organized tournaments, we saw that we had, for instance, 10 players, and then in the first round we had 5 games that ended in a draw. So this is much better, I think. And today I wanted to show you a very cool game. It was played against between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. The interesting thing was that in these 4 games, everyone won with the white pieces, so the result was 2-2, and we had now this Armageddon game, and this Armageddon game is really well, one of the best time formats. I really like to watch these Armageddon games in which white has 5 minutes on the clock, black has only 4 minutes on the clock, but white needs to win the game. If the game ends in a draw, then black has the whole point. So I've played one Armageddon game in my life. I managed to get a draw with black and got through in the next round in the tournament. I reached the quarterfinal here in Zagreb. It was, I think, a good accomplishment for me, facing also many stronger players. So this Armageddon game is really an attractive time format. Here we have Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces, because Magnus Carlsen in the poll he won the poll, and then he had the opportunity to choose, and Magnus chose to play with black, which is, I think, a good idea. When you have the opportunity to choose in an Armageddon game, I would always choose to be black, because this need to win, I think, is too much to handle. It's too much of pressure, I think, for white. So let's check out the game. This is now this Armageddon game. E4 played by Hikaru. We have C5 by Magnus, knight to F3, E6, the French variation of the Sicilian, which is, I think, one of the most natural ways that you can proceed against E4. It's really a natural, good opening. I think you should try it out if you have troubles while playing against E4. D4, C takes D4, knight takes D4, and now knight to F6. We have knight to C3 by Hikaru, and now D6. Now Magnus goes into a chevening system. I was wondering what kind of an opening will Magnus choose, because Magnus used to play this Sveshnikov or this Lasker Sicilian. Now he changes a little bit the Sicilian style. This chevening system, of course, allows you to have this very nice restriction of the center. Your opponent cannot jump with some knights. But the problematic thing about this chevening setup is sometimes this d6 pawn. It could be a long-term weakness. In the game, bishop to e3 played by Hikaru, and now bishop to e7. We have bishop to e2, and now knight to c6, challenging the knight, and now f4 immediately by Hikaru Nakamura. I've also analyzed now many of these Alpha Zero Stockfish games. Alpha Zero and Stockfish, they go immediately like g4, g5, h4. F4 is also a common idea in this setup, so trying to get ourselves really a dominant pawn structure in the center. And in the game, castling played by Magnus, simply healthy developing move, securing the king first. And now knight to b3, which is really the best move in this particular moment, because there is one problem. If you try, for instance, bishop to f3 or castling, then black has always the opportunity to play this move e5. That's the problem, challenging the knight after something like f takes e5, d takes e5, attacking the knight. Okay, here white could take the knight on c6, but after b takes c6, the position is more simplified. Okay, maybe here we can even trade off the queens, but let's evaluate now the pieces. Here this light square bishop of whites is a little bit blocked out. On the other hand, I think black has a better activity with the pieces, still with this maybe weak pawn on c6, but it's not easy for white to attack this pawn, because this pawn plays an important role. It restricts also this very important d5 square, so the knight cannot jump. On the other hand, black would have also the opportunity to attack with rook to b8 on the b file. So this continuation is not good. So I see this bishop to f3 would be immediate mistake. In the game, Hikaru plays really the accurate move, knight to b3. I just want to always to show a little bit opening theory. Here in the game, a6 played by Magnus, preparing b5, because in some occasions white could go queen to d2, queenside castling. Then we want to have this pawn on a6 and then try to play immediately b5, because then we would attack this knights. They're a little bit endangered here on the queen side, and that's why here Hikaru played a4, preventing this b5 idea, and Magnus played simply b6. You see, this is really this common chevening setup of the Sicilian. The pawns are only on the 6th rank. We didn't attack the 5th rank so far, and the queen is a little bit overloaded to the defense of this b6 and d6 pawn. But you see how Magnus will solve all of these positional problems. It's really an instructive game, although it was really in this blitz format. As said, Magnus had only 4 minutes on the clock. In the game, castling played by Hikaru, and now bishop to b7. Simply developing move. We have bishop to f3, and now knight to d7. Very important move by Magnus, because one of the ideas is also to cement our knight on c5. In the game, g4 was played by Hikaru, and this was, I think, his first mistake in the game. There is also one mistake that you could make immediately after this move, knight to d7. Here, if you try f5 immediately, it seems like a logical move because we want to crack the position. Then black has always the opportunity to use this e5 square. It will be really dangerous after something like bishop to e2. Here, knight to c5. You see how important this move was by Magnus Carlsen. After something like knight takes c5, we have b takes c5, and okay, queen to d2 seems like a logical move, but now d5 cracks the position in the center. You see how this flexible pawn structure of the chevening system allows you sometimes to create a pawn breakthrough in the center. So f5 so far not possible, and Hikaru pulled here a very dangerous move, g4. This g4 would be basically a logical move when you have this king on the queen side. When, if you could just imagine, if white would have castled queen side, then this g4 would be really dangerous, because then we could maybe try a flank attack on the king side. And Magnus, after the move g4, played a very tricky move, knight to a5. And okay, what to do here? The problem is Magnus wants to occupy this square on c4. This is, I think, now the critical moment of the game, because here Hikaru played, I think, a mistake. He played the move g5. Knight takes a5, I think, is a must move, because after b takes a5, maybe with queen to d2, we can solve the position, because now this e5 pawn is not so dangerous, because white has always this 3 pawns here, this pawn storm sort of. In order to crack the pawn storm, we want to attack it, of course, in the center. And the center of the pawn storm is this pawn on f4. So in order to crack the position, black would love to play this move e5. But now it's not possible, because we have the opportunity to simply pass through with the move f5. And now g5 is a serious threat that black has to handle. So I think here in this position, e5 is not a possibility. So I think that Hikaru should have taken simply this knight. In the game, he played g5, and this was very risky, because it allows now Magnus Carlsen to jump with the knight on c4, allowed really this active square for the knight, bishop to c1, and now e5 cracking the position. Now f5 is not a possibility, because the g5 pawn is hanging. You see this advanced pawn. It seems like a dangerous move for black, but it's basically a dangerous move for white. This g5 is too much to handle, and now in the game bishop to e2 play by Hikaru. If you try, for instance, something like f takes e5, it doesn't bring you so much because Magnus can simply take bishop takes e5, g5, pardon me, and now after something like e takes d6, we can simply place our knight on e5. And now you see how these knights are very dangerous. You don't want to lose, of course, your light square bishop, because this light square bishop is the key protector of the king, because we have played a little bit sort of a fianchetto style. You don't want to lose this bishop. If you try something like bishop to g2, here bishop to c1 is the possibility for black after queen takes c1, as we don't want to take with the rook. First of all, this b2 pawn is hanging, but that's not the only problem. We can also use the square g5 for the queen, so white would be forced to take with the queen, and now queen to d6, I think, is a comfortable game for black, as these knights are very dominant in the center, and I think black has a better position. So you see after the move e5, so here Hikaru didn't take f takes e5, he played bishop to e2, attacking the knight, rook to c8, simply protecting the knight on c4. Again, you don't want to take the knight after rook takes c4. This e4 could be a problematic pawn. Then I'm not seeing a good way how you should defend it, because also knight to c5 is the possibility to attack further this e4 weakness, and with this light square problems you still need the bishop on the board, so giving up the bishop is not a possibility here for Hikaru. h4, trying to hang on to this g5 pawn, but it's a little bit too late, because here Magnus simply took e takes f4, rook takes f4, bishop takes f4 cannot be played, because again your b2 pawn is hanging. You see how problematic this knight is now for Hikaru, because he didn't trade it off. In the game, knight to e5, now Magnus can really find the natural squares for the knight. Knight to d5, and here very important move, knight to g6, and basically it's game over here, because this h4 pawn is hanging. If you try to defend it with rook to g4, then you get knight to e5, attacking the rook, and again the rook has to retreat. We could simply take then after that this h4 pawn. So in the game, Hikaru played rook to f2, and Magnus simply took this annoying knight on d5. This bishop was anyway blocked out by this knight, so here we want to give up a bad piece for a good knight. So bishop takes d5, e takes d5, but now simply knight takes h4, we grab the pawn. This knight is very active, this knight is very active, and now there is a new target in the position, this pawn on g5. And Hikaru tried here to counterplay with the move queen to d4, and I'm not sure how many time Magnus still had on the clock, but this tactics that he pulled off, it was really a great tactical move. Bishop takes g5, leaving the knight hanging, simply taking the pawn. You see now this king is naked here, because this king doesn't have any pawns in front of the king anymore. So now what to do? Here in the game, Hikaru tried bishop takes c4. If you try bishop takes g5, it's again a bad choice, because queen takes g5, here queen to g4 would be a possibility, but now simply queen takes queen, and now after bishop takes g4, here you see these three extra pawns on the king side, I think are too much to handle for white. So that's why in the game bishop to c4, here Hikaru maybe thought that he grabbed the piece, but it's not a problem, because we have here bishop takes c1, rook takes c1, and now queen to g5. Now the queen comes very actively into the game, and now king to f1. If you try king to h1, then I really analyzed the dangerous tactical sequence that can happen to white. Queen to h5 is the possibility with some discover check possibilities and attack the queen. So this could lose the game for white immediately. White would be forced to play something like bishop to e2, but now you get knight to f3 anyway, and here after king to g2 we can simply take the queen. After bishop takes h5, now knight takes b3, wins the game for black. I'm sure that Carlsen saw this, because now of course the rook is hanging, you cannot take the knight. So again after c takes b3, you see rook to c1, this would be game over. So great attack here by Magnus that wasn't played in the game. I just wanted to show you what happens if you go back here with the king on h1. In the game, king to f1 was played by Hikaru, and now knight to f5. Again, it's not a possibility here to play something like queen to f4. It seems that everything's protected, because Hikaru maybe hope that here Carlsen can take, but now rook takes f4. But then again, you have some great tactics. Knight to e3. Basically, the knight is protecting with sort of an X-ray tactics here. After knight to e3, you would be forced to go somewhere with the king. Queen takes f4, rook takes f4, and now knight takes c4. You see how dangerous this knight can be in this position. So that's why after the move knight to f5, Hikaru didn't play this move queen to f4. He sacrificed the rook for the exchange. Queen takes f5, but it's game over. Because the king is really endangered here. Now these rooks will come very dangerously into the game. Rook to g2. Here Magnus played a couple of checks, and after queen to f5, king to e2 was played, and it allowed now Magnus to go with this rook very active into the game. King to d2 was played, and now rook to e4 in this position. Hikaru resigned. He'll lose the bishop, of course, in the next move, and with this powerful two rooks, the game is over. So great attack by Magnus, great tactics that he saw really in this time format. He had only 4 minutes on the clock. Great blitz game. Magnus is back in shape, although he lost 2 games against Hikaru. But as I said, this is really an interesting time format. We'll have always 4 of these rapid games. You can always come back in the game. And what this tournament already showed that Alireza Firouzja lost the game today against Dingliren, so he's still sort of a fish between sharks, but he's only 16 years, of course. He'll maybe gain some points here. I wish him all of the best. And here it also shows that when Magnus plays really his best chess, that basically no one can beat him, so he has to get his things together. He has to get a clear head in order to make something happen also in this tournament. But as I said, we'll have now great days in front of us. We'll have a great tournament tomorrow. We'll see other grandmasters. So far this was a great tournament. No draws. You saw how there were not so many draws, so that's why we like this format, and I'm really looking forward to watch more of these games. Okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games. Here's the link, and you can also watch my other commented chess games played by computers with some Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, Stockfish games, and many more. And you can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.